SOLIDWORKS routing can be used for multiple purposes, including guiding the path of pipes, flexible tubing, and electronic components. Though there are many similarities in how the program functions for the routing of each of these, there are separate tools for each provided. As I mentioned before, you had some different tabs pop up when we enabled SOLIDWORKS routing. Those are for the different functions that SOLIDWORKS routing has. Electrical can be used to create electrical routes, cables, and wire quickly through imported electrical connection data. You can see some of these tools up here specifically related to cables and things that go perfectly with electronic routing. Now, piping, you can see here, has again some things relating to the routing of pipes. Piping is used to model solid, rigid piping connections in your model. We can add in things like connections and weld gaps to fully represent the piping system. Tubing tools are similar to that of piping and are used to allow for the routing of flexible tubing, especially in hydraulic functions. Things you'll notice up here are standard tubes, unhooking and hooking to clips, and things like that we'll discuss later in the course. We're going to focus on piping and tubing routing today because these share the most similarities and are a good starting point for learning the software. However, you can definitely apply some of these concepts to the electrical routing after you go through the course. There are parts like connectors and flanges and things that you'll also find that are now provided to you in the design library. So if we go over to the right side of our screen and select this Design Library tab, and you will see this design library, which contains a lot of things that you might have used for other types of modeling in SOLIDWORKS. Click the dropdown, and you will now see that there's a new section specifically for routing components. You'll find things such as conduit, electrical, HVAC, piping, and tubing, which we mentioned earlier. Now, we're going to dive a little bit further into what is contained in each of these folders later in the video after we start creating the routes, but it's good to just be aware that these are here, and if you wanted to, you can go ahead and click the pin in the top right corner to keep this up and maintain it as a reference as you keep going through, so it's easy access to all the parts you might need for piping and tubing. We can now see the three main uses for routing in SOLIDWORKS and routing in general. We can see that piping, tubing, electronics are ready to use, and we're good to go ahead and dive in to some modeling of some pipe.